obviously we talked all about COVID yesterday, so we're not going to talk about COVID today, which is awesome, and I think we're all ready to have that new line of thinking. But I will say that, 2 months ago, it was like June 1st, and we were getting kind of nitty-gritty on the details of the summit, the theme, and I knew that I was going to give a talk, and I was starting to freak out, because I'm like, I am exhausted, okay? This heart-head connection that, I talk about a lot in Wonderhunt was pretty confusing, and there wasn't much going on there because of the trauma, because of the exhaustion, because of all of it. And I'm like, how in the heck am I gonna have anything to say for 45 minutes or whatever in 2 months? I have nothing. So I went on a quest for inspiration. And luckily, I have the routine of spending about an hour every morning in quiet time, in my prayer time. So one of those mornings, I was having this panic attack, and I had this little prayer, and I said, how do I get this inspiration back? And this came to me instantly, which Jason mentioned yesterday. He's the intuitive one, but when I get a whisper, I really know it's something, because I'm really a sensor, so I don't intuit a lot. So I heard inside my heart this thing of like, just show up for 30 sunrises, and I'll tell you everything you need to say. So being very stubborn and persistent and obedient, like Jason said, when I get my mind on something, like 30 sunrises, okay, I can do that. Whoa, that's really early. 4:50, you guys? 4:50! That's like the summertime sunrise. That's not like winter 7 o'clock kind of thing. So that took a minute, and a couple people I told this to, a couple of close friends, they're like, oh, are you a morning person? I'm like, that's not even the point. This isn't the morning. And of course, I had to be at the horizon, or I had to be on the edge of the bluff with coffee in hand. So I actually had to get up earlier than 4:50, right? So it was simple, but not easy. And I think actually we all know about this, right? Some of the most simple ideas are not easy. So there were 30 cups of coffee, and they tasted so good. I now drink it black. I mean, I want it all, like I needed every ounce of that feeling. And so, a couple of funny comments. This is just for Jason, so just remember that, right? Always. And, my kindergarten teacher side me couldn't help this one, right? C is always for coffee. But many of you know I love to look for hearts in nature, and my coffee didn't look this pretty every morning, but all of a sudden, even though it was early, I would feel so energized. Rachel and I talked about this the other morning. She sat on the bluff and watched the sunrise. Was that just yesterday? Oh my gosh, it feels like 2 weeks ago. And so the idea that I was so energized, the idea of like, oh, watch the sunrise and go back to bed. You've never watched the sunrise if you think you could go back to bed after, because the energy that you get from that experience is like, you've got enough for the whole day, right? So I was feeling that, and all of a sudden my cup was filling up, and my pages of my journal were filling up, and my heart was coming alive, and this quest for inspiration was like inevitable. It was like, I don't know how am I gonna narrow this down? I ended up with 150 pages in my journal. Now, how do you summarize 150 pages for a talk, right? And not everything was for all of us. Some of it was just for me. So that was the discernment I had to do the last couple weeks. It was just a heavy lift. What's for me? What's for you? What's for all of us, right? So this was my attitude. I think I will do nothing for a long time but listen and accrue what I hear into myself. So what I did was I would go to the bluff with the coffee, and I would say in my heart, I'm listening. And then I was just okay with that. That was it. And I kind of looked at it as like sitting with a friend, like in my experience with like my God, and like, I'm listening. So let's just sit here together. And I would always hear the same thing back. And it said, what do you notice? I'm like, that's a really curious question. I'm like, what do I notice? Okay. And then that's when I would write. And sometimes I noticed the seagulls that were going crazy and getting the fish, and other days I noticed a hummingbird that was like sitting on a branch for like 10 minutes. And all I could see was its black silhouette. And I was like, what? You know? And it was every day, it was something different that I noticed, and it just kept filling my heart with inspiration. And so inspiration brings the best out of us. It plays a critical role in our lives. It can be the difference between feeling fully alive and the drudgery of slogging your way through another day. What inspires you? So me inspired is a totally different person than me uninspired or whatever, slogging. It's night and day. And I look at Jason, he'll shake his head, right? I'm a totally different person when I'm inspired. I just have ideas, I have optimism, I see possibilities, even if there's roadblocks, right? So this was my heart quest, and I thank Kathy Rose for that language, because I put the pictures up, and Kathy Rose is a huge encourager. If she's an encourager to you, consider yourself one of the luckiest people in the world, because that's a gift that you have. And she said, good luck on your heart quest, Kim. I was like, thank you for that, because that's what it was. I was searching my own heart again. So here's I'm going to share 3 lessons. Remember I said 3 lessons is like what speakers do. But the first lesson is actually just for me, and I have a feeling it might be a few of you, but it won't be all of you. And that's okay too. This one was just for me. Don't confuse busy for burdened. And I have been saying for a while, busy is a 4-letter word. And these people, before COVID, people glorified that word. How are you? Busy. It was like a badge of honor. And so that has always been something I've struggled with in my head. Like, we should not be glorifying busy. Well, then COVID hit, people actually got bored. It was a different thought process, but I think we're all getting back to busy. This one came to me, and I'm still processing it, to be honest. This idea that, why does busy mean burdened? You know, as a mom who works from home, homeschools our kids, like busy can sometimes feel burdened, because you kind of take this mom martyr thing, you know? So I said, no more complaining, like to myself. Like, let's not look at it as a burden, let's look at it as a wonderful blessing. There's wonder in all of the full, right? And I think some of you will relate to that, some of you won't. That's not your season, and that's okay. But that was a reminder for me that I'm like, I think a few people might need to hear that one. So the 3 lessons I'm excited to share with you today all happened staring at this horizon. And the first one is seek peace. Number 2 is wonder within. And number 3 is witness a miracle. Number 1, seek peace. But don't seek easy. Okay, so I think that's the one that really, it kind of kept coming up over the course of the month. You know, this dedication to show up every single day was not easy. It was a commitment. There were times where I got 4.5 hours of sleep. And it's like, how's that going to work by 3 o'clock this afternoon? It doesn't. But I am a napper, so that helps. But luckily, the stubbornness mixed with commitment to this moment knew that I had to keep doing it. So if you are not committing to time with yourself, I beg you to change that. Find a way. It won't be easy to carve out that hour. And I don't care where it is. You don't have to be a morning person. It could be, you know, your lunch hour, where it's like, I don't eat lunch with anyone else. I go for a walk. I read, whatever it is that brings that back to you, brings yourself, this heart and head connection, back together. It's kind of like, if you're stressed and you're not doing that, we'll just do that, because that's a good place to start, right? So I have to tell you about Charlie and Lucy. Many of you know that Lucy's a horse whisperer. She's a horse fanatic. And now that we're in Sheboygan, we are getting a really cool opportunity for this to kind of unfold, and it's at an equine sanctuary in Elkhorn Lake. It's about 25 minutes from our house. They house horses that need safe places to heal. And so they have about 20 horses, and it's all run on volunteers, and you can get trained, show up any day of the week at any time to help what needs to be done. So this is Lucy's happy place, and I have to tell you, it's turning into my happy place as well, even though I've never been a horse girl. But how do you not get changed by these animals? They're just very healing animals. This is what we do when we go there. We literally pick up poop for an hour or two because that's the help they need. You know, there's 20 animals. This is a constant thing. So most kids, when they want to be around horses, they just want to take lessons and you know, see a horse and touch a horse and braid their reins and all that fun stuff. Lucy's fine with picking up poop. And that tells me something, right? As a mom, of like, this is serious. We're going to take this seriously. So this week she starts riding lessons. And that's pretty exciting, right? By the way, if you're going to Google image horse poop, be careful. Because looking for this sign was very disturbing, although these were pretty funny. I'm like, oh, I can't believe how many pictures of horse poop there is. Most of it's like medical, like if your horse's poop looks like this, there's something wrong. So there was a day after it rained that we were out there, and we hadn't been out there right after it rained because it doesn't rain a lot in the summer here, but it rained and rained and rained, and we got out there, and our goal is to fill the wheelbarrow, and then she brings the wheelbarrow, she does the hard work, she brings the wheelbarrow all the way to the manure pile, which is like usually really far away. Thank goodness, because then you don't have to smell it so bad, right? So she filled it up, but because it had rained, we were totally newbies. Guess what happened? It's super heavy. I did not think about this. And the paddock was really muddy. So you combine like tripling or quadrupling the weight with the muddiness. And we are in some deep shit, you guys. Literally, I'm like, do we just undo what we just did to move this? But Lucy kind of had that look on her face like, I can do this. And I mean, it was probably from me to the back of the room, or not the back room, the back table, that she had to go to get out of the paddock. And it was all muddy. And she like was going like a foot at a time and taking a break, 2 feet, take a break, 2 feet, take a break. She broke down and started crying at one point. Me and Ro were outside the paddock cheering her on. I'm like, do you want help? And I'm thinking to myself, do I help her? Do I not help her? Like, how do I handle this? And at a certain point, I was like, oh, she's learning grit. And so I didn't help her, but I really wanted to, right? Because it looked really hard, and she was breaking down, and doing it anyway, through the tears, doing it anyway. And I actually did a video, but I didn't want to show it, because it's pretty vulnerable, because it was hard, wasn't it, Lucy? That was really hard. And you did it. So we get about, I don't know, I'm so bad with distance, from here to the sunglasses, to the, like that's how far she is from the horse manure pile. And it tipped. Oh. And this, I love this. This is Ro's compassionate heart, trying to pick it up with one hand. And she's holding her notebook, that she was drawing in a few minutes earlier. But going back to this one, if you want something you've never had, then you've got to do something you've never done, and that was what Lucy is doing. She wants to be around horses. She wants to be able to care for them, and you got to do the hard stuff, right, to get there. So don't seek easy, seek peace, and that's what you do in your happy places when you're trying to grow within them. By the way, this is a pony, but it looks like Lucy's huge. If you think of it, it's like, isn't that funny? It's like she's humongous. All right, lesson number 2, wonder within. All right, many of you are like beat over the head with my Wonder Hunt stuff. So I hope, it's not for everybody, because I think, as I was talking to someone yesterday, nature and finding wonder in nature isn't everyone's jam, right? But some of you who get it, for sure. So I've been talking a lot about wonder the last couple of years, because that's been a place where I've found a lot of heart and head connection. And I do find it in nature photography and just going on walks and seeing what I see. And Angela, I just instantly, I look at certain people, I think of your pictures. I'm like, the cactus, the raindrops, So it's been a really cool thing. Well, about a week into my Rise and Shine project, as I called it, I had this total moment of insight while I was watching the sunrise. And it had to do with wonder, and this is a word I'm almost over familiar with. You know how things can be too close to at a certain point, then you kind of lose the magic in it. But this came to me that there's two definitions of wonder. A noun, which is what I usually am talking about, like awe, surprise, that emotion that goes along with what you see. That's usually where I exist with wonder. But the one that struck me was the verb, curiosity. I don't think about wonder that way at all. I don't think of it as an action of I wonder, duh, right? But I mean, there is two sides of that word that I've sat on for a while, and I was just kind of reflecting on. What is this? Why am I thinking of this so differently? And I went back to the hearts that I like to find, and I was like, is that a clue for me of what I'm trying to do? Why am I drawn to hearts? What is happening there? And so this came to me. What if you become more curious about yourself and it changes everything? Maybe the wonder out there and my desire to find hearts was kind of like a stepping stone for me to find my own heart. Am I looking for my own heart out in nature? Right? So and so this line came to me, your heart is a work of art. Yeah, I think our hearts are works of art. And there's a lot of baggage that we have in that heart from all of life, our families, experiences. I mean, even in this room, I look around and I have the privilege and gift of knowing some of little snippets of your stories and the trials and challenges that some of you have gone through. And those challenges make that piece of art more beautiful, right? So this is the line of the day, you guys. This is the one that if I could just do a mic drop and walk away for what I learned on that bluff, this would be it. The beauty we witness around us doesn't even begin to compare to the beauty within us. And once that hit me, every sunrise I saw was more mind-blowing than ever before, because it was telling me that this was even more beautiful. And I'm like, what? How could that be? That is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It's changing every second. Every brush stroke is changing every second. And how could this be more beautiful than that? And not that it's a comparison game, but it's more of if you think that's beautiful, look what I did inside of you. So this is our youngest, the girl with many names, Virginia Rose, Ginny Rowe. She was actually born, it's hard for me to say this word, on call? Okay, so, is that how you pronounce it, Lynn? Yeah, okay. So when she was born, she was actually born in our bedroom. Jason pretty much caught her. She had her bag of waters, her sack, still around her when she was delivered. It's very rare. We had no idea it existed. But after her birth, our midwife was like, you guys, I have something to tell you. This girl, this doesn't happen very often. This is a very rare thing. And there are theories, if you want to Google about these people that get born with their sack still around them. So, of course, when Jason was about catching her, he's like freaking out because she looked purple because she had her bag on her, right? That was scary. But at the same time, later, we're like, what? And so you look it up, and it's like, I think I figured she is like probably the only person in Wisconsin right now that has ever had that happen, based on population, okay? So that's how rare it is. And according to theories, they say, you know, there's things connected to like who she might become, and there's like Einstein had that, and all these names of people that you're like, okay, that's weird. Like she's gonna be highly intuitive, but it also says her heart is very sensitive, like very sensitive. And we've noticed this, and you know, I don't know all the science or spiritual connections of all of this, but I kind of take it seriously, and so I'm like, okay, well, I'm just paying attention, I'm noticing. What do you notice, right? I'm noticing that her heart is pretty remarkable, and Lucy, you'll agree with this, won't you? She looks at life differently, and she's affected by life differently than the rest of us in our family. Not that that's unique, everybody has their own view, but I am seeing her heart being has a very thin layer on it that allows for enormous love and enormous hurt. So that's an interesting role as her mom, to be like allowing for all of that. So as unschoolers, which some of you have heard us talk about this, but the style of homeschooling that we have chosen for our kids is interest-based learning. So we don't hand them a book, we don't sit at a table, we don't give them curriculum, we follow their interests. And it's pretty mind-blowing what happens with that amount of trust that you place in the process of human curiosity. And so one of her gifts, as unschooling parents, we look at their gifts and we coach along based on what we're noticing. I'm like, wow, you're really good at that. Maybe this is something we can go after, and that sort of thing. So she is really good at making things beautiful. If she gets to make something beautiful, she's alive, okay? So there was one day where the yard was just kind of exploding with flowers, which as new homeowners, we're like, oh my gosh, we have coneflowers. Oh, there's daisies. You know, like the first time everything kind of erupts in your yard in a new house, it's like so exciting. So the kids and I were gonna be mowing, and she doesn't mow yet. So I grabbed a couple glass vases. Another like cool thing is I love to entrust the kids with special things, because then they treat them special, right? So I took our best glass vases, set them on the driveway. Part of me is like, these are gonna break, you know? Is this a good idea? I'm like, nope, this is good. So put water in them, and I gave her scissors, and I said, will you make some bouquets for the house? Because we have a friend coming over, and I want to be able to have some pretty flowers around the house. And if you could have seen her face, you guys, she was like, what? Like I handed her like, you know, cash, you know? she's like, yeah. So she just pitter-patter, like she had fairy wings, like, you know, going around the yard, like clip, and design, and, you know, an hour later, she's like, I did it. And she had these 3 vases, and she was just like glowing, her happy place, right? And so, you know, that idea of our hearts are remarkable when we're in the place that we're supposed to be. And I try to do that with our kids, Jason too, like pay attention, because we all have that place, whether it's for your kids or yourself, or your spouse, or best friend, or parent, and own it. You know, Ben's our green guy. Like, if there's green, he would love to eat guacamole, you guys. Like, he wants that car, you know? He's gonna own who he is, because that's what we try to instill in them. But that's also what we try to instill in ourselves, you know? So this is just a funny aside. We met these guys, the sausages, at the 4th of July parade in Sheboygan, which was pretty epic, by the way. And this is a little foreshadowing in this picture. Do you see what's on the bottom part of this picture? That is the back of Ben's head. And yes, we are Cubs fans living in Wisconsin. And these guys are owned by the Brewers. So being a Cubs fan in Wisconsin, we have to own that, because we are Cubs fans. Where's Lisa? But yeah, she's got her cup shirt on today. So this is what happened, you guys. Let's see if I can get it to go. Oh, no. Let's see, I gotta get it.
You're up. That's like a paddle bar. Mario!
Own it, right? I'm like, where are the cups at? So this line stands out. I love Dolly Parton. She's just so sincere. Find out who you are and do it on purpose, right? Own it. All right, Wonder Within. That was the second one. So our third one is Witness a Miracle. I played with the words on this one, you guys, because this one was interesting. There was a deer, okay? I went out one morning, and there was a deer buddy, we've named him, standing that close to the swing. That's where I sit. And he was just standing there, and I was right there, and I'm like, hello, buddy. Now, we had met Buddy in the winter when there was less brush in our yard. We could see the deer a lot easier. And Buddy has some issues, including the lack of sight in his right eye. Okay, so the kids have a theory that when he was little, an eagle came and tried to scoop him away, and he made it, but he got a lot of challenges from that experience. That's the story we've created. Okay, so I'm that close to Buddy, but he doesn't know I'm there. Okay, I'm that close to Buddy, and he doesn't know I'm there. And I'm like, Buddy, I'm gonna freak you out when you notice. I'm like, who's gonna freak out more, you know? And I think he was chewing the whole time. So I'm like, do deer chew when they sleep? Is he asleep? Is he just literally not able to see me? This went on for like a solid 5 minutes, you guys. I was sitting on the swing going, okay, this is gonna get interesting, but I really don't want to give him a heart attack. Like, I was like trying to like kick the grass to like make a little motion thing, you know. So eventually, I think I stood up because I was like, I need to get on with my day, buddy. And then he like flipped out and ran away and whatnot. But this was definitely a shared space that I was experiencing every morning. So that was neat because there were like a flock of pelicans that came in one morning, about 40, okay? And we didn't even know pelicans existed up here, but we looked it up, and sure enough, there's like Green Bay pelican like kind of thing. It's like so cool. Their wingspan is intense, right? There was, like I said, the hummingbirds, the seagulls, the chirping birds, you know, like normal yard birds. But there was another day I was sitting, it was shortly after the Buddy experience, and this is the mama. I was sitting on the swing, and she came right by me, and behind her was her fawn. And I was about 4 feet from them, and I was flipping out. I was like, oh, you know, like, what is happening? You just can't put that into words, really, what that kind of experience is when you experience nature and animals in their environment. But one thing that we did notice in the winter were the eagles. Okay, so in January we moved in. By February and March, we started seeing the eagles, and we were connecting with our neighbor, and she's like, "Are you watching the eagles?" And we're like, "Oh yeah." You would see them just kind of just going for flight back and forth between trees out on the bluff. This is a new experience for us. We're not used to eagles. And I know the cross folks, the stressors are like, eagles, yeah, we see them all the time. They're amazing though, still, right? Magnificent. You're like, of course this is why this is our country's bird. This is amazing. And so in the winter we saw them a lot. And then we went, 3 months or so, Jay, without seeing them at all? And we're like, oh, they must have found a new place, you know? But they came up again because my dad, during the swing time, my dad, who I've talked about in the past a little bit, he was going through a pretty rough time with his health. And like one of the earliest memories, I was sharing this last night with my table of my dad, is he would come home from work and I would have to help him his shoes off. Because when I was 5 years old, he was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And if you've ever known someone I think the modern version of that disease is a little easier because of medication, but 40 years ago, it's rough stuff. And lots of surgeries, lots of pain. So he loves eagles. His favorite Bible verse is the one about soaring on wings like eagles from Isaiah. And so eagles has always been kind of a connecting point with my dad. He loves airplanes, he loves flight. Eagles are just kind of like the nature representation of all that. And he was going through a really rough time. And almost like, ooh, is this the end, you know? And so I was like, I need to see an eagle. And I haven't seen one in 3 months, but I need an eagle today, you know? And I'll go back to that, but there it was, you guys, a standing witness to a miracle. I'm like, yeah, it's not a miracle that there's eagles in our yard, but I kind of needed one that day. It was like a sign that I needed, that no matter what happens, he's gonna be okay. You know, so I was looking and looking, that was kind of the edge. And sure enough, there it was. So, and I know some of you already know this verse, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength and will soar on wings like eagles. That's his strength with the pain that he endures, and you would never know it because he finds that strength from within. So the second day I went out, I was like, I wonder if I'm going to see that eagle again. I was like very childlike, right? I'm just curious if it'll show up. And sure enough, it did. And I saw it on the second day. So then the third day I went out and I wrote in my journal a big number 3. And I just said 3 days in a row, I want to see the eagle. Like maybe, you never know. And within a minute, 3 eagles flew by.
Wow.
3 eagles. So this quote really, a lot of you love Brene Brown. She's powerful, the work she's brought to the world. One day you will tell your story of how you overcame what you went through, and it will be someone else's survival guide. And I think that's what I think of with my dad, you know, of the strength that Jason says I have is mainly from what I've seen him instill in us by his example. You know, the strength I see in this room and the trials that some of you have gone through, you know, loss, pain, accidents. This is your story that can help someone else eventually when you heal. And you can't help other people with your story until you do heal, which takes work. It's simple, but it's not easy. So the heart quest was a win. I mean, I have not felt this alive in a long time. I have risen out of my COVID coma, right? We climbed the peak and I feel like I'm at the top. So I have the question for you guys as we kind of look to leaving this place, this kind of safe haven for us adult diabetes fighters. What quest is calling you? What are you seeking? What are you searching for? What are you asking for? What are you pursuing? So I have a couple examples of quests that have inspired me. This guy, raise your hand if you know John Foreman from Switchfoot. He is, if you like the work that Jason puts out on Sunday mornings, he is the musical representation of that kind of work. Same messages, just in musical form. Every time we hear one of his new albums, I'm like, Jason, he's like reading your mind. So he's a very talented guy. He's our age. We followed him for years. One time at a concert, he stood on our table and sang, and it was pretty epic. And so we're big fans. But he went on a quest a couple of years ago. He's the lead singer for the band Switchfoot, which is kind of a crossover band of rock and singer-songwriter kind of stuff. And so he, after his concerts, he still wanted to play music. So it was like 11 o'clock at night. All the other band members were like, I'm going to the hotel. He was still ready for music. So he would go to the streets with his guitar and just play for who was out there. Like, he just needed more music. And so, as he was releasing a solo album, he decided, I'm gonna do 25 concerts in 24 hours. And there's a documentary about it called 25 and 24, and it is so inspiring, you guys, even if you don't know his music, because the logistics, Kara, of 25 concerts in 24 hours, of where they needed to be, who was gonna be there, what musicians were meeting them there, who was gonna show up to listen, they planned it all. And Little Miss Details really appreciates that. I was like, that is amazing! And their band broke down in the middle, no spoiler alert on that, but so it's really cool. But at the end, they basically were on the beach in California for sunrise, and that's how it ended. And it's a pretty inspiring story. So his quest for music, it's like he was doing music every day. Why did he need more? I don't know. This is his happy place. That's where his heart came alive, and that's the gift he brings to the world. So it's pretty cool. Sherry is an Adult I Inspire. She's been an Adult I Inspire of the month, right? She is the beautiful friend of ours who has taught Lucy everything she knows about monarchs, okay, and horses. But she had it in her head that she wanted to take a motorcycle ride around Lake Michigan. But it's been on her bucket list for 20 years, but she always kind of pictured doing it with someone else, like having a partner in crime. And that just wasn't ever materializing. It wasn't like coming together like she hoped. And she had an experience where her coworker was going to be putting her bike into storage. And Sherry's like, so you're putting your bike into storage? That's kind of a bummer. And she's like, you want to borrow it for a while? And Sherry's like, maybe. And then this memory of this bucket list item came up. And she was like, I still don't really have that partner in crime to go do this with. And she's like, that's okay. I'm a different person now. I can do this by myself. So she did. And of course, when she came through Sheboygan, she stopped at her house because we're right on the edge and showed us her bike. And at that point, she was about an hour or two from home because she lives in Zion, Illinois. And she was blown away, you guys, to see. And she said this was a quest for courage because going up over the bridge in Mackinac Island, and I don't know all that she had to do, but it was pretty courageous to be by herself on a bike doing this solo. She said it was pretty life-changing for her, this quest for courage. This is a good friend of ours. I don't know if Kara knows Liz. She was in one of our first early speaker masterminds. She lives in Milwaukee. Her and her husband they have a sailboat. And they have an annual quest for quiet. So they take the sailboat once a summer to Michigan. And it takes about 20 hours, depending on the wind. And they stay in overnight in the boat and anchor in the middle of the water. And they'll just have these really quiet days, she said, where we can't do anything else. There's no cell phone reception. And they had twin daughters who are now 20, but throughout their childhood, this was time where she's like, we couldn't leave, we had to be together, we had to, just basically be together, and there was nothing else we could do other than be in this little, I think she said it was like, I don't know, 100 square feet, it was small, right, the sailboat. And when I asked her about it, she was just like, this is the best thing we've ever done, and we'll do it as long as we can. Do you guys remember Neil and Jenny Mathwag from a summit, some of the alumni? So they, last summer during COVID, sold their house, packed everything into an RV, and left. They have 3 kids, 2 dogs, and they're on a quest for freedom. So he is an entrepreneur, he's a real estate coach, and they've been meeting people around the country at different events, and soon enough, I think he kind of figured out that these people could be his clients. And if he had the freedom to get to them and spend time with them in person, then maybe that would be even more meaningful. So as a homeschool family, they already had that freedom, and they said, let's go. And they haven't went back. And their pictures are fabulous if you follow them. It's pretty fun. And then we have this lady who drives Little Miss Sunshine. that what you call her? Little Miss Sunshine, her
I
car?
have a friend in Madison that's in the Shawn Michaels organ. He has his own music and his own group, and that's one of his songs.
Little Miss Sunshine, that's her car's name. She is on a quest for joy. And if you are not friends with Kathy Rose on Facebook, you need to tell her that you're gonna invite her and get on there, because maybe not every night, but a lot of nights, she posts the sunset. Because she drives a Little Miss Sunshine around the farmland of Wisconsin, and she captures the most gorgeous sunrise or sunsets that you'll ever see. And honestly, I had so much trouble picking 3 or 4 pictures, because I'm like, everyone is so different and beautiful, and seasons change it, and that quest for joy, as Kathy told me, is something that she realizes that who doesn't want to see a beautiful sunset, right? So that she can put that out, and by putting that beauty in the world, not only is that a gift for herself, because she's the one, kind of sending that out, but people comment like, thank you for this, I needed this. Because not everybody can see it every day. And then there's these two. If you haven't introduced yourself to Karen and Paul Tracy, they are the dynamic duo of this group. A side-by-side quest for fun and joy at home. So during COVID, they both worked from home. Kara just recently finished her 500th post about adding more joy to her life on her Facebook. 500 in a row, 500, right? And then Paul, when he was working from home, did this whole thing at lunchtime about having fun at home. And the shenanigans, you guys, were pretty intense. I think this was like scavenger hunt day. And I pulled them aside yesterday because I'm like, you guys, doing something daily like that is not easy. Because you're not riding that high every day. So the persistence to add joy to people's lives, it's over 800 posts they've done collectively in the last year and a half. So their quest, I don't know how intentional it was from the beginning, because you had no idea it was gonna last that long, but you stuck with it. And your example is one that is so inspiring for all of us. So as we kind of wind up, I just encourage you guys to find your happy place. Spend an hour there every day. And maybe your happy place is the Grand Canyon. Like, well, that's not realistic, right? But the point is, how can you recreate and ritualize peace? Make it a ritual. Make it something you look forward to with whatever those little pieces. Maybe so. Jason has really, 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 really good smelling candles in his hour every day. And that's one of his little rituals, right? This has just made me smile, you guys. These are therapy dogs waiting for their shift to start at the children's hospital. Like, heart explosion, happy place. Like, where are you when you're that happy? Right? So a couple final points. Stand and wonder on the edge of what's possible. Here we are. We're walking out into the world today. And I want you guys to say, what's possible? Now that this has happened, all of this, even everything at this summit, everything the last 18 months, everything the last your whole lifetime, what does this make possible? And shine your light. Because that light in your heart is a gift to others. Live on the horizon. We have to keep our heads up. Even on the days when I was so tired, sitting on the bluff, I'm like, my head's up. I'm awake. This is a good day. There's possibility. Be open to the whispers, because those aren't coming from you. So just as I summarize, the seek peace, wonder within, and witness a miracle. Those are the 3 lessons I felt like I was supposed to share with you guys today. I think this is a book, because I have 150 pages, you guys. So hopefully there'll be more that gets shared along the way, but hopefully one of them will will kind of stand out and be something of meaning for you. So I just ask you guys to rise up like the sunrise, because we all want to see you shine. Thank you guys.